This channel has been established for visually impaired people. For the visually impaired people, voice narration and a written expression are also provided for the hearing impaired. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Stonekeep is a role-playing video game developed and released by Interplay Entertainment for the PC in 1995. It is a first-person dungeon crawler game with pre-rendered environments, digitized characters and live-action cinematic sequences repeatedly delayed. The game that was supposed to be finished in 9 months eventually took 5 years to make. The record longest development of a video game at the time. Contents: 1 gameplay, 2 plot, 3 development, 4 release, 5 reception, 6 legacy, 7 references, 8 external links. Gameplay: Stonekeep is a first-person RPG in the style of Eye of the Beholder and Dungeon Master. The game is set in a series of underground labyrinths, filled with monsters, treasures and traps. The player uses the directional keys on the keyboard for movement and typing in notes in the journal and uses the mouse pointer to interact with objects and characters. The mouse pointer is usually a target indicator for aiming attacks and weapons. Wherever it is clicked, when the mouse pointer is moved onto a particular something, it changes to another icon to indicate a different action. For example, the mouse pointer changes to an eye when the player can examine things, often signs, or the mouse pointer changes into a spread out hand when the player can pick up items. Other mouse pointers include opening and closing chests, opening and closing panels, pulling levers and switches, pressing buttons, drinking water and giving items. Fighting the Ice Queen. The protagonist Drake has 2 starting possessions, the Magic Scroll and the Magic Mirror. The Magic Scroll allows the player to pick up an infinite number of items. Items of the same type can be combined together up to a maximum quantity of 99. Other items can be combined together, such as a quiver which can hold 99 arrows. The Magic Mirror allows the player to equip Drake and other characters with weapons, armor and accessories, and to consume items to affect their status, such as healing potions or bad-smelling throg food. Otherwise, Drake can read scrolls used on him. Although Drake can wield any weapon, other characters like Farley and Karzik can only wield hammers, axes and shields. Certain weapons like polearms and heavy swords require Drake to have 2 free hands to wield one. Some armor can be worn by certain characters. For instance, only dwarves can wear dwarven plate mail and only Drake can wear knight armor. Exceptional characters like Sparkle and Wahuka cannot be outfitted, but can still consume items. The third possession is the journal, available once the player procures it. The journal is divided into 6 sections. The first section of the journal records the statistics of Drake, shows the status of his current equipped weapons and describes the characteristics of his partners. Drake's statistics are strength, agility, health and his weaponry skills, including polearm, sword, magic, missiles and others. The second section of the journal records any clues and hints the player may come across. The third section of the journal is used for writing notes. The fourth section of the journal records items each time the player picks up a new type. The fifth section of the journal records runes each time the player comes across a new one. Unlike the items section, the runes do not have their own respective name recorded. The sixth section of the journal records the level maps that the player's journeys through. Spots on the map can be clicked and notes referring to them can be written. Stonekeep features an elaborate magic system where 4 types of runes are inscribed onto a spellcaster wand: Manish, Phi, Throgish, and Meta. The first 3 runes are used for offensive, defensive and special interaction purposes. The Meta runes enhance the effectiveness of the base runes, like Double Power multiplies a single firebolt in 2. To use a spellcaster, it must contain adequate mana and runes must inscribed onto the shaft of the spellcaster to inscribe runes on the spellcaster. The player needs to equip the spellcaster on either one of Drake's hands, open the journal onto the runes section, take out the spellcaster and copy the runes onto the spell slots of the spellcaster. Then the runecaster can be taken out at any time and the spell that can be used has the spell slot highlighted and launched on the indicated target point using the magic mirror. Some spells can be aimed on the characters, especially healing and quickness spells. Plot: Stonekeep's mythology revolves around a variety of gods associated with planets of the solar system in order. They are Helion Mercury, Aquila Venus, Thera Earth, Azrael Mars, Marif Jupiter, Afri Saturn, Safrini Uranus, Yoth Sagoth Neptune the master of magic, and Kor Sagoth Pluto the brother to magic. These gods were captured and imprisoned in 9 orbs by the dark god Kul Kum 1000 years before the events of the game, during a cataclysm referred to as the Devastation. Stonekeep is centered on a hero, Drake. 10 years before the events of the game, Drake's home, the castle of Stonekeep, was destroyed by the insane god Kul Kum. The Shadow King Drake, at this time just a boy, was saved from the castle by a mysterious figure returning to the ruins of Stonekeep. Drake is visited by the goddess Thera, who sends his spirit out of his body into the ruins itself to explore, find the mystical orbs containing the other gods, and Reclaim the land along the way. Drake makes many friends, including Farley, Karzik, and Domber the dwarves, the great dragon Vermatrix, the elf Enigma, and the mysterious Wahuka, the king of goblins. Together, they embark on a quest of ridding the world of Kul Kum and his consort the Ice Queen. Development. The project started out with just 2 people, Peter Oliphant and Michael Quarles. It was intended to last only 9 months and only supposed to cost $50,000. However, because the initial stages of the game looked good, it exceeded 9 months, lasting a total of 5 years. Eventually there was a production crew of over 200 people, and costing a total of $5 million. The intro sequence was the most expensive part of the production, costing nearly $500,000 to produce, which was 10 times more than the initial budget for the entire project. The initial storyline was written by Oliphant, who also designed and programmed the graphics and artificial intelligence engine for the game. The project started out being called Brian's Dungeon, named after Brian Fargo, the president of Interplay Entertainment at the time. Fargo came up with the final name, Stonekeep. The production took much longer than expected because of the rapid advancement of personal computer hardware at the time, specifically, PC CPUs advancing from 80,386, to 80,486, to Pentiums in the years the game was being developed. Oliphant, who originally designed the game and was lead programmer, left the game as the project passed its 4th year in development. He felt his continued presence was resulting in the constant addition of feature creep and changes. He was a contractor, and had initially only signed up for a 9-month project. After he left, the design became finalized and the product was shipped 1 year later. Quarles, who was an Interplay employee, stayed as the game's producer and saw it through to the end. The initial specification for the game included that it could not require a hard drive or a mouse, run on an 80,286 CPU, use 640K, and run off floppy disks. At the project's end, the game had been upgraded to requiring a mouse, a hard drive, a 386 CPU, and ran off CD-ROM. As a result, the engine had to be extensively modified throughout the production. The initial motions of the monsters in the game were captured by using a blue screen outside with the sunlight. This resulted in uneven lighting from take to take, so eventually all that work was scrapped. Later, a professional studio with controlled lighting was used. According to Oliphant, when the project was taken over by Quarles, 2 questionable decisions were made. The game was always designed to be grid-based, where the player moved from grid to grid in contrast to today's full freedom of motion 3D environments. Oliphant wanted the movement from center of grid to center of grid, but Quarles changed this to edge of grid to edge of grid. This resulted in the problem that turning within a grid moved the player to the other side of the grid. Much of the long production was a result of correcting this lack of symmetry. The other questionable decision was to not include Oliphant in the production of the motion graphics. Oliphant had extensive Hollywood background before becoming a game developer. One consequence was that the original combat graphics had been captured from the waist up only, as Quarles had reasoned one must be close to a monster to fight it. Peter Oliphant, upon being delivered these graphics and seeing them for the first time, pointed out that the player could back away during a fight, which would result in seeing their legs. The legs therefore had to be drawn in by hand frame by frame. To fix this, until these graphics were scrapped for a professional green screen treatment used later on, the original skeleton in the game was an actual skeleton being worn by one of the artists, and was filmed against a green screen. Because of this, there were no images, animations of the skeleton walking away from the player during gameplay. A few months before the game's release, the skeleton was replaced with the 3D model which was used on the packaging. About 3 years into the project, Oliphant suggested to Fargo that the product be delivered on CD-ROM. Fargo rejected this idea at the time, citing the failure of previous Interplay CD-ROM projects that had gone this route. Oliphant suggested this after Fargo requested him to drop his percentage of royalties by half due to the high cost of production and goods to create the product, as it was at that time to be shipped on 8 floppy disks. The cost of 1 CD was about the cost of 1 floppy disk, and the possibilities for 8 floppy disks having problems is much greater than a single CD, so the solution seemed obvious to Oliphant. And, in fact, 6 months later Fargo changed his mind and made the same decision due to the complexity of the graphics. During play, the computer would have to constantly load graphics from the CD. This prohibited the use of the CD for music, so the developers used chip music for the soundtrack. The game features the voice of Arthur Burghardt, well known as the character character Destro in the Gi Jo 1985 cartoon series, in the role of Kul Kum. Release Stonekeep was originally released for the PC-DOS and Windows 95 in 1995, packaged in an elaborate gravestone-style illustrated box and came with a white hardback novella Thera Awakening, co-authored by Steve Jackson and David L. Pulver. All rights of the novel went to Interplay. The CD-ROM also included a file called Muffins Thext, which contained a recipe for Tim Kane's chocolate chip pumpkin muffins. Years later, Stonekeep was later made available for purchase through GOGCOM's digital distribution system for Windows XP and Windows Vista. Reception Maximum praised the game's atmospheric 3D rendered world and sound effects, but criticized the lack of challenging puzzles, low amount of gore, and sluggish combat, giving it 3 out of 5 stars. Computer Gaming World named Stonekeep as the role-playing game Reader's Choice winner in its Game of the Year awards. A review by Bernard Yee of GameSpot did not offer similar praises, concluding that Stonekeep is a dated first-person RPG that suffers from a poor interface, little depth, and few frills, and rating it a 66/10 in 2000. The Adrenaline Vault stated it was the best game of 1995 in its genre and is still an awesome game to play. You're guaranteed to spend hours upon hours on this game and never tire of its thrill. GameCola gave it a highly positive retrospective review in 2011. In 1996, editors of Computer Gaming World ranked it as the 10th top vaporware title in computer game history. Due 1991, delivered 1996, stating that after seeing the same basic demo for years, the game finally shipped. As an anti-climax, Stonekeep was also ranked at number 6 on GameSpot's Top 10 Vaporware Hall of Shame in 2009. GamesRadar also included Stonekeep among the games with untapped franchise potential due to the cancellation of Stonekeep 2. Godmaker Legacy. The Oath of Stonekeep, a novel set in the world of Stonekeep, was written by Troy Denning and published 1999 by Berkeley Boulevard Books. Interplay's Black Isle Studios worked on a sequel, Stonekeep 2, Godmaker, for roughly 5 years, before eventually cancelling it in 2001 in order to work on Icewind Dale 2 and Baldur's Gate 3, The Black Hound. The game, alongside a novelization, would remain the only entry in its series until the 2010 announcement of Stonekeep, Bones of the Ancestors, a game developed for Interplay by Alpine Studios. It is not a sequel to Stonekeep, but rather an all-new game and a standalone entry in the franchise. Bones of the Ancestors was released in 2012 as downloadable content at WiiWare References *AB Stonekeep purchase page. GOGCOM retrieved 12 September 2009. Wilson, Johnny, et al. June 1996. The Computer Gaming World 1996 Premier Awards, Role-Playing Game of the Year. Computer Gaming World 143-58. J. C. Fletcher. 13 January 2010. Interplay Resurrecting Stonekeep on WiiWare. Joystick retrieved 24 August 2013.